Hey all, Pixel here, back in the Cyberpunk Cube. And I have all sorts of important stuff I should be doing to this, but instead I'm adding silly lights, because why the heck not? A couple of things I've been waiting to come in. These are some really neat looking fog lamps that I found that I really like. I wanted some funky looking fog lamps, and I really like the look of these. So I think that I'm going to mount this one. You can change the bracket depth. So I think one of these is going to get mounted here, and I couldn't mount one in the same place on the other side anyway because that's there, but I don't want to anyway. And I think the second one is going to either get mounted next to it there or off the top of it. Some interesting things. I'm going to end up with 2 fog lamps in this area. I think that'll look cool. And then I got myself a ton of RGB LEDs. They're from this company, Mic Tuning. I'm not sponsored or anything. I bought them off eBay with my own money. But these are not just multicolor RGB LEDs, but they're the addressable ones, which means that you can do rainbow patterns and things like that because they don't all have to change at the same time. I bought literally their biggest kit here. It's got 8 or 10 aluminum LED strips. And then I bought 2 more rock lights that work with them too. Part of the reason I went with this company is its stuff looks like it's good quality, but it also comes with a proper controller. There's a bunch of them that want you to just use an app, and then there's a bunch of them that come with a really dinky cheap controller. This looked like it was a much better quality thing, so gonna play with these and see what I can do. I think I'm gonna get these mounted up first, and then this I'm gonna experiment with. I'm gonna set them all up and see what they look like, and then I have to figure out where I'm mounting them. The reason I bought as much as I did was I want to get full coverage under the car, and then I also want to see if I can possibly put them inside. Like, I'm thinking maybe these will work, one mounted under each seat to get that same glow inside without blinding anybody, because it's all going to be just down in the footwells and reflected. So yeah, I think let's get these mounted up. All right, there we go, all mounted up. I'm reasonably happy with it. This bolt down here, I think I'm going to have to swap out for a normal bolt so I can get a ratchet on it and really get it tight. But then again, I might strip it out. These are a little janky. These are the controllers for it because these are actually, I've forgotten until I saw the multicolored wires. These are both amber and white. So the neat thing with that is that I can potentially buy how I wire them up, have them do interesting things color-wise as well. Since these boxes looked cool, I decided I'd mount them here instead of in the engine bay. So I now have a bunch of extra wire in the back. This is just going to get zip tied up out of the way. And then I'll run wire for this inside. But I like that. I think that looks cool and interesting and weird, which is what I always want on this car. They're definitely going to need some detailing because there's a bunch of interesting shapes here you don't really see. So I'm probably going to, when I get to the weathering stage, these are going to get dry brushed with silver and rust or something just to really help these shapes pop. But that's cool. I like that. That's very different. So awesome. All right, now onto the LEDs. I've got the power pack for it just jumpered to the battery. It's already got a fuse on it, so that's fine. And then I've got all these hooked up. Hopefully this is going to be playing with the remote here. So if I hit auto, okay, auto is slow fade? Yeah, slow color change. Mode 1. Oh, there we go. That's the absurdity I wanted. And then America. Speed that up. And we can make them dimmer? Is that what this button is? Not sure. That was hard to tell. White, green, red. I'm going to cycle through all the colors. Strobe. What's strobe do? Okay. Do anything else, or you just fill? Oh, it's a little disappointing. I was hoping that they would. But yeah, you see the absurdity. You see. Now, one thing I did not realize, and I should have probably paid more attention to the packaging, there's two connectors over there at the thing that come down and connect to this first set, and then these are hooked together, like hardwired together. And there's another connector that connects this to this, but there's no further connections. So now I've got the problem of these extra rock lights I bought. I'm not sure how these go in. Those are the mounts. That's the light. Oh, okay, these are through and through. So this can get mounted like at the beginning or something. I'll be able to make that work in some way, I think. And then I have, oh yeah, because I have a stupidly long extension cable, which will help too. So, all right, interesting. If I were to, yeah, and then that's just part of the chain. And yeah. This is absurd and I love it. Oh, another thing I got done. Remember how I said I wasn't happy with the zip ties holding these on, so I got some cheap P-clips from Harbor Freight, and I've secured that much better. I like that look a lot. And then over on this side, I had the hoses for this just run kind of in there, and what I did was, again with the P-clips, this now runs up here and down into the cowl, and I think that looks really cool. Definitely, it's much more interesting to bring that out into the car as opposed to just have it in the bumper. I have a ton of zip ties now everywhere I need to clean up, but I'm totally happy with that. That looks so much better. This area, I had brought those hoses over because this area looked a little empty, but now that I've got these in here, oh, I don't think these are going to stay on with the, yeah, it's a little too cold for the 3M tape for those, so I may have to zip tie them on for the moment. But with that there, that area's now got stuff going on. So yeah, every time I make a change to this, it looks more crazy and insane, and I love it even more. All right, I didn't film it, but I reworked this. I decided I didn't like this one hanging out up here. It was a little too floppy. So what I did was just installed it in the bolt hole on the other side. So you can see they're slightly off height-wise, but I actually kind of like that. And then I moved these around because I put the plate on the inside instead of the outside. I realized where I had it before that it didn't fit in here I didn't like, but I was able to slightly reposition it. And I also cut off some stuff in here that it was catching on. And I was able to get it there in a way that it's still completely visible so the cops won't hassle me, but is now not in front of all of this cool shit. It's now behind it. I did some paint touch over here, which actually went really badly, but whatever. This is not supposed to look perfect. It's supposed to look beat up, so I will take it. I just wish I hadn't gotten orange on that. The next step here, oh, I also got orange on all this stuff, but whatever. The next step is obviously wire this up. These are still not hooked up, so that's the next thing that needs to happen there. But I like this setup a little bit better. They're better mounted and less kind of jank, and I really like having the plate inside there because you see all this tubing, which just looks better than a plate covering it all. All right, so I'm trying to start figuring out the install on these, and I figured out one thing that sadly is not going to work. which is that I wanted to run these from the front to the back down both sides, you know, and have them both terminate in the rear in the middle. I wanted to run them from the front to the back with them both terminating in the middle and the back, so that when they did the chase thing, they would chase front to back. But unfortunately, this kit's not designed for that. This is one, you need, there's specific end ones because they don't have anything coming out of the other side. So I couldn't even add to this if I wanted to because the wires are potted. You know, the connectors the wires would go to are potted into the silicone there. And this is the other, so that's one, this is the other one. And you can see they're different lengths. So this is designed to be the side of the vehicle. This is designed to be the rear of the vehicle. So there's no good way to integrate them. Also, I was realizing with the way the rear suspension is designed on this, I would need way more wire between the two, even if I was going to try and do one of each length, which means I'd have to extend both of these, which just seems like a bad idea. I want to cut as few wires as possible. So this one's going to end up at the back. It's going to end up attached to the bottom of the bumper bar and is going to feed that way to another one. And this one is going to run along the driver's side, feeding forward to the one that's across the front. So, yeah. So this is just this is nice and easy. I'm going to screw one end to basically this bracket here, and then to wherever it meets in the middle, and then the same thing on the other side. Screw it to the bracket, have it meet in the middle. There's more. Rather than pull them taut on the wire, I'm going to leave the wire a little tight to get them in a place that I feel more secure about. And I want them tucked just a little bit back so that you're less likely to see the actual, strips. And if I mounted them where they would fit properly on this bumper bar, just all on the bumper bar, there's no good way to do that. I think, well, maybe this does curve back. Maybe. I don't know. This end's crunched, so that's part of the complication. That's part of why yeah. That was why. I knew there was a reason. This end is crunched, so it's easier to mount it to the bracket that I replaced over here than to try and fit it on the bent bumper bars, straighten the bumper bar out to fit. All right, so I'm working on the front ones, and like I said, like I showed you in the back, I kind of need to go, across with these two short ones. The thing is, I don't want to put it down here where the lower radiator support is, because that's already bent from having been whacked into something. And I just feel like I'm going to scrape it off if I put it down there. And I realized, well, I've got all this space behind all this stuff. There's a dead zone in there. I can put it there. The thing is, I don't have a center mount because I've got the crumple structure over there. I got the crumple structure over there that holds the bumper. There's my two ends, but what about the middle? So I made this. This is I'm going to loosen these two straps and then tuck this in behind them on the underside of that and screw them into this. It'll be nice and easy because this is aluminum, but it's also nice and thick aluminum. And then that'll hold the middles, and then I can from there screw the ends into the two things, and that'll hold it just fine. It'll all be behind this, but it'll work just fine. And I won't have to worry about scraping it off like I would if it was all the way down under the car. Like if I had a normal plastic bumper on here, that's kind of how you'd want to do it. You'd want it up in that plastic bumper somewhere. So this will do the same job. All right, I have them all mounted. I've got them all connected. Like, these two are connected, those two are connected, and they're run up into this wheel well. This is as far as I've gotten because I haven't figured out how I'm getting them into the car. But I wanted to double check that everything worked. So these are run up. I've got an extension cable in here for the shorter one, and then I've got the controller, and it's just connected to the battery. So let's see if this works. Uh-oh. Well, let me double check my connections. Okay, let's try this again. Ooh, we got some color. Brighter, 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 brighter. Mode. All right, there we go. It's kind of working. We got light there. We got light all down here. We've got light here. Ooh, it lights up my exhaust pipe really nicely. And then we've got light there. So that's all of them. Excellent. everything is working. So I didn't damage anything in the process of installation. So I told you how I was attaching the back. I told you how I was attaching the front. Both those went together well. The ones that run along the side here, this one is just screwed in a little valley behind the pinch weld. It's deep enough in there that it's nowhere near, like if you put a jack in, the whole pinch weld would have to crush before it gets touched. The one that's back in this area, there wasn't enough, literally not enough floor pan for the length of it. So it's screwed to the body over here, the floor pan over here. But on that end, there's a zip tie that goes around part of the mount for the rear suspension, and it's zip tied to that zip tie. And it's nice and solid, but it's kind of junk. At least it feels kind of jank. So now that I know everything works, the next stage is to get these into the car somewhere. So now that this is all working, the next stage is I've got to get those wires into the car themselves so that I can hook up in there. I have, like I said before, these rock lights, which I was actually looking at them again. These are really nice. Like, these are aluminum housings. These are really well built, and ironically, they're going to be the pieces inside the car. But I need to get those wires into the car, figure out where these are being mounted. I'd like to mount them under the seats, but depending on wire length and stuff, I might have to put them, like, one of these may end up under a seat, the other one may end up under the dash or something. I don't know. But I need to figure that out, and then I need to permanently wire that controller box into the switch panel, or the fuse box. I don't think I ever mentioned it in the video. I added a separate fuse box for all the other crap I'm adding onto this car. There's a heavy gauge wire run from the battery into the car, and there's a 6 or an 8 gang fuse box there that's always continuously powered, and then off of that via a relay there's a second fuse box that is relay and on a switch, and that was the one that all this dumb shit's going to go on, so that if I want to, like, no, I don't have any lights lit up somewhere or something that a cop is going to hassle me for, like, okay, I need to be completely legal because I'm driving on the road or whatever, I'll just be able to flip a single switch and know all that stuff's off. The other one has got, like, the seat heater. It's going to have, like, the fog lamps, stuff like that. All right, so I found a unused grommet in the firewall over here on the passenger side. So the wires have been fed down through, sorry, I'm using my phone as light, through here under the carpet, and they're currently going under the seat over there. And I've got one of the lights hooked up. The other one, the wire's hooked to an extension. That's going to go under the driver's seat. And then the control module is going to go somewhere between the two seats so they can hook into both of them. So since I've got that grommet that I found, and since I've got everything torn apart, I decided I'm running wire into the car, because might as well do it now. So what I've done, these are all 18 gauge, which is fine for most stuff I'm going to run. I am going to run one heavier one. And what I just did, they're all labeled, and I'm just pulling these across, tucking them in over here, which is very hard to do when it's there. Picking them in over there, and I can go back over here and I can cut these off and label the other end, and the wires will be all about the same length. I've already done that once, so I'm going to have 6 18 gauge wires. Because I only have 3 colors available, that's what the little numbers are. So a 4 and a 4 or whatever means I can figure out which wire is which without a whole bunch of testing. Like I said, I'm going to run one heavier gauge wire along with this stuff, just in case I have something that's a bigger power draw. So the fog lamps I've already installed are going to take 2 of these wires. I know at least one other thing is going to take at least 1 wire, maybe 2. So that's at least half, possibly 2/3 of these that are already necessary. So the theory is I'm running extra stuff because it takes no more effort to run 7 wires through a hole than it does to run 1 wire through a hole. And if I've already got them run into the car and I've got extra on both ends, it just makes my life exponentially easier in the future. They're already there, they're already run, they're already tied away. I'm not tearing the car apart repeatedly. So yeah, that's why I'm doing this. Make my life, future me's life, easier, because current me's doesn't have to put a lot of extra effort to do that. And in the end, this is what I'm left with. Basically, 7 wires bundled together, labeled on both ends, and I've put a little condom on this end to make it easier to fish through the firewall grommet, and then similar heat shrink tubing in little bits as it goes along to just keep everything neat. So now I just got to take this, feed it through the front of the car so it goes through all the bits that I want it to, feed it through the firewall, and then most of it is going to just get curled up in the firewall for right now. But yeah, this is going to make my life so easy going forward. Alrighty, we have it in and run. Here's one end. I'm going to use 2 of those immediately for the fog lights, and then the rest are going to get neatly zip tied up in here. And then it runs along here, inside here, under here, along here, and down, and through the grommet in the firewall. All of this is zip tied in place, so it's not going to move. It's tucked away as much as it can be. This area, I wish there was a little more support, but there's really nothing to attach it to. So I just put in a couple extra zip ties on it to keep it together there. Same over here where it kind of floats while it's going into the grommet. But yeah, I'm really happy with how that all went together. It's all out of the way, and I now know I've got 7 circuits here to work with without having to run it all. And trying to get that condom with all of these in it through that grommet was a pain in the ass, but it would have been less. But it was a pain in the ass once instead of having to do it multiple times every single time I added a circuit. So I'm really happy with that. What I'll be doing is as these get split off, you know, they'll get secured in their own ways and places. But yeah. And then, sorry about the darkness, but from in here, I've got, you know, a good chunk of wire. I could have made it longer. Probably wouldn't have been a bad idea, but that's long enough for it to get over to the fuse box, which is really the important part. And obviously you can add wire to any of those that I need to. But yeah, that's all set. So with this and all the undercarriage stuff secured in place, I think I'm going to call that a good and productive day. And the other thing is, this is now, once I put that grill back on, I can drive this again because there's no exposed wiring that's hooked to anything. There's nothing dangling, anything like that. So if I don't get to the rest of this right away, the car's not kept from being able to be used. So that's always a good place to stop. So yeah, I'll pick this up as soon as I get back to this project. Another day, and thanks to some other projects, nothing's coming out of the garage for a while. So I guess that means I'm going to be working on the Cube because it can't go anywhere, so I might as well mess with it. All right, in the last video, I added this wiring harness. So today I'm going to tie 2 of those into the 2 settings for the fog light, as well as ground the fog lights. And then inside, I've got some plans for how I'm going to make those power up, as well as the undercar lighting. Got this wired up. What I did was put an extension on this one to bring it over so I can connect it to this one, and then these 2 come together into a 3-prong plug. So I've got the 2 different colors of the fog and the ground. The 2 obviously go into this, and then this just grounds out over here. I put the connector on because I realized I'm going to want to be able to pull this bumper off without having to cut wiring. And I had bought this connector kit, and this seemed like a perfect time to try it out. So this end's all wired up for those. Now it's all inside stuff that I need to do. So apologies that it's a little dark in here, but down in here I've got that wiring harness that I made with the 7 wires, and then I've got the 2 wires for the under lighting. And the plan is, like, I've got those spots for the undercarriage lighting that I'm going to put one under each seat so I can get that same RGB effect in here. And then that will probably mean the controller gets mounted either under a seat or under the console, one or the other. I kind of like the shape of it, so if I can have it somewhere visible, that's not a bad thing. And then a couple of other things I'm going to be doing. Right now I have this switch over here that turns on all the cyberpunk bullshit, is the way I've been describing it. But I picked up this, which is an emergency stop button that's now powered, that's turned off. So I think having that just somewhere on the dashboard as the way to turn the power on for all that, so I can just go and turn it off, is kind of cool. It'd almost be fun to have it the other way. You slam that and all the stuff powers up, but that would be overly complicated to wire. And then I made this quick little switch panel more as an experiment. This is some leftover stuff from the rear lights, and I've been experimenting with it, and I think I like it right there. So what I'm going to do, I realized I have to go get connectors, but I'm going to pre-wire all of these so that they've got a ground and the like pigtails for the other two sides, so that I don't have to try and fish every individual wire. It's kind of like with the wiring harness. I don't have to fish every individual wire up into it, and then this will be able to power on multiple different things. One of these will be one of these is going to be the fogs in one color, one of these is going to be the fogs in the other color, probably. It's the easiest way to do it. And then the other ones will be for future stuff. I haven't decided if one of those is going to turn on the RGB stuff or if I'm going to depend on the remote. I'm leaning towards depending on the remote rather than one of those switches. I probably will run power to all of those switches just so that when you flip them, they light up even if there's no power to them. Because if I have these just power relays, then I don't need to run individual fused power to each one. They just have to run in and run back out again. As you know, power to all of them, individual power out to multiple things. And for like the fuses, I can just have the fogs, they can just go directly because they're very low power draw, but higher power draw stuff, this can just trip a relay to power that. So yeah, I need to figure out how to mount it. This right here is part of the side curtain airbag. This is a retainer for it that keeps it dropping properly. And it's normally captured behind the panel. Without the panel here, it's not even so much I'm worried that something's going to happen to it, as I'm afraid somebody's going to use it as a grab strap. I've got the same thing on the other side. I don't want to leave the piece of trim in because I like the exposed stuff. So I'm basically planning to use this to cover this one to protect it. And I'm going to make some sort of cover on the other side to protect that one so that nobody grabs that side. And then I have this wiring harness, which is too thin realistically to run the power for all those things through. But what I think I'm going to do is shove one end down here, cut it, and shove the other end up here and attach it in place. It'll just be a bundle of wires coming up, and I can include in that bundle additional wires that operate the switch panel. So, got this installed. I realized that it's way shorter if I do it this way, so I just drilled a giant hole in the dashboard, screwed it down. I did realize, which is awesome, that this has two circuits. One is turned off when you push this on, one is turned on. So this is now an on switch, not an off switch. So now that activates all the Cyberpunk stuff, which is why it's now labeled Cyberpunk instead of emergency stop. And then that's off. In addition, I realized I had, oops, this old scan gauge, which now doesn't want to power up. This was working a second ago. I'm very confused. Very strange. Come on. This thing's been in a box for a while. Back to the main menu. There we go. This is an old scan gauge. It does scan, it does trip, it does gauges, a couple of other things. Obviously none of these gauges are going to show anything because the car's not running. But yeah, I had this in my old XB, and I just figured it would work here. Some extra gauges. Though I've definitely got a problem somewhere with a connection that I'm going to have to futz around with. I'm not sure what, because again, this thing's been in a box for a while and I'm not sure what is going on. But once I get it working, now that I know it's a problem, that'll be cool to have. I'm still plugging away. The biggest problem right now I was having was the little torch that I use for all of my solder connections. Ran out of butane last Sunday after stuff had closed, So I was able to find a little torch lighter in a Dollar Tree, which worked for that day, but didn't work anymore. Today I bought some butane and I could not find the original torch. I tore the entire garage apart and finally found it in the drawer with the scissors and knives. I have no idea how the heck it ended up in there, but I just refilled it. But that was slowing me down because I was trying to do stuff on the front with just a regular flip lighter. And yeah. All right, and I've got these switches in. Can't really show you effectively, but the negative grounds are ganged with 16 gauge and then go to a ring terminal that's on the screw holding it in. And then the powers are ganged on a 16, which is this wire that runs down through the dashboard through to the relayed 12-volt box there that's controlled by the switch up here. So in theory, because I've got half of these on and half of these off, when I push the switch, half of those should light up. So let's find out if I did it right or not. Hey! Okay, that one's... I got that switch and that switch aren't happy. So, given the age of these switches, this could be a bad switch. It could also be a bad connection. But given the ones... because they all start up here, given that it continues beyond, oh, there we go. That switch itself is not super great. I have a bag of these, so I'll change that out for a better one. But, oh, I just popped. This switch is also bad, but it just popped the fuse. Interesting. Okay, well anyway, I'm gonna have to play with the switches a little, get some better quality. Not better quality, but like working ones. Yeah, these are all old and a little jank, but we kind of knew that. That's why it's on a freaking relay and a freaking fuse. So yeah, I'm gonna have to change, let's say that one. This one's a little crunchy. So we're gonna change that one. And we're gonna change this one because it didn't want to light up. But those all work. They don't have anything hooked up to them yet, but they're all powered up and I can reach behind here to plug things into them once I get to that stage. Yeah, you can actually see this relay boxes are neat because see that light that's lit up? That is the fuse that popped, causes a LED to light up to tell you this is the fuse that blew. So I know exactly which one I need to replace. I don't have the right size, so I'm not gonna. So I'm just gonna turn that back off for now, but progress. And now I can take 2 of these and run them to run the fog lamps. So I am chipping away at this. There's tons of this extra wire so I can get it routed properly once I've got everything else in here. All right, real quick. I've got the 2 wires hooked up over here. I ran 2 wires down and through and around. And then if you look in the back there, you can see 2 zip ties. I drilled 2 holes and zip tied there and another one over here down at the end of that piece so that the wiring harness that I made is now supported all the way through to here. This is the end of it right there. And then everything is hooked up that needs to be. So the fogs will work. The RBG underlights are there and they're wired in as well. Wires are run up here for the 2 fogs. They're on these first 2 switches here. I've replaced those 3 switches that were kind of iffy over here. So once I put a couple of new fuses in down there, I should have the RGB lights, I should have the front fogs, and the rest of these switches will just light up and look pretty. I've got that wired up and working. I've got that plugged in and working. Oh, this was being weird and iffy. I had it plugged in the back. I plugged it in the side and it works fine. This thing has only ever been plugged in the side the entire time I've had it, so maybe the back plug is either bad or corroded because it's always been exposed or whatever, but works fine now. So that takes care of that. So I need to put all of this junk back in and do a unbelievable amount of cleaning up. Like the front of the car, or the back of the car, everything is a disaster. This job just exploded everywhere. But once I get the fuses and put this front stuff back in, I should be 100% back up and running and back to normal. As normal as this car ever is. So I found some fuses, and we've got full disco party going on. It's hard to show you full effect in the garage, but yeah, this is exactly as absurd as I'd hoped it would be. You can't see it, but I have the remote in my hand, and here's just all kinds of different buttons I can push. Do all kinds of silly, ridiculous stuff. This is every bit absurd as I'd hoped for. America. But yeah, it's strobes all the way around the car. And I haven't placed the ones inside, they're just under the seats. But it's enough to give me full disco party effect going on in here. So I'm very, very happy with this. This is so dumb. I love it. Oh, I did discover a problem though with the way I mounted those LEDs. Let me shut these off for a moment. Which is, I've got them sideways and I did not realize quite what their beam pattern was going to be. So I now have very narrow vertical spots. So I'm going to have to redo those and mount them the correct way, because that's not going to work at all, unfortunately. I do want them to be useful and also not to blind other drivers. So obviously nowhere near done, but we got to start. By the way, I decided to paint parts of my dashboard. I just decided I was tired of gray, so I went absurd. So yeah, I've got my shut off here. The Cyberpunk button is installed. I've got the scan gauge. I've got this set of switches, which all do switchy things, and some of them do other things. I've got my absolutely ridiculous underlighting. So yeah, I have a whole bunch more I need to do on the dashboard. I've decided that wire harness that I showed you before is going to run up over here and up over here, and I'm going to put another switch panel in here just to use this otherwise boring space. That one's probably going to be purely decorative. Just a lot of switches that I can turn on. But I have to say, I'm happy with all this. I'm really glad. Like, finally I got the interior going in. Finally I've been working on this. So yeah, I'm really happy with that. Next time I pick this thing up, it's probably going to be more interior work, because now that I've started it, I want to get further along on it and really get the details going. I'm waiting for slightly more consistently warm weather to start the back bumper, because I want to weld that and then I want to immediately paint it so it doesn't rust like the rear lights did. But yeah, I'm happy with this. This is fun. I'm gonna disco party a little bit more, and I will talk to you all later. Bye.